Why is Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen running from the truth all the time? First, back in 2017, Yellen supported the Trump regulatory reforms for banks. Take a listen.
I certainly do agree with the core principles. They enunciate very important goals, especially for smaller institutions. We're very well aware of the burdens that they face and are looking for every way we can find to mitigate those burdens.
Oh, yeah, well, she should have held that thought. But lately, in the banking crisis now, she says that the Trump banking reforms decimated the regulatory system. Take a listen to the new Yellen.
When the president and I took office in January 2021, we inherited a financial stability apparatus at Treasury that had been decimated.
Decimated? Really? Oh, my gosh. Well, that's like saying there's no inflation or it's transitory. Joining us now to talk about this and many other things, Kevin Hassett, former chair, Council of Economic Advisors. And, folks, you ought to take a look at his latest piece. First of all, National Review Online. Secretary Yellen and the Fed bear much of the blame for the banking collapse. And he is the author of The Drift, Stopping America's Slide to Socialism, which is the most important book of the 21st century. So, Kevin, we have a dichotomy, I guess is the word. In 2017, as Fed chair, she supported the Trump reforms to bank regulation. But now, here in 2023, a scant 6 years later, she says that when she came to Treasury, it was all decimated. All these reforms destroyed the banking system. And guess what? Trump is to blame. No, you're to blame, or I'm to blame. Anyone's to blame but her. What do you make of that?
Right. Well, I think it's a sign of the intellectual bankruptcy of the entire Biden administration. If you look at it, going back, I mean, you and I were talking about this at the White House, that community banks were failing about one a day. Because the Dodd-Frank regulations that the Democrats forced through were driving up costs for little banks. And I can remember that Andrew Ullman, one of your advisors who worked at the Senate Banking Committee, told us that 75% of agricultural loans are done by community banks and 50% of small business loans are done by community banks. And so therefore we had to do something. And the Fed recognized it, Tarullo at the Fed recognized it, and now they're blaming that regulation for this collapse. But that regulation doesn't have anything to do with that collapse. The SVB collapse basically happened because the Federal Reserve was asleep at the wheel.
You know, she said,
and the Treasury.
If you go back and look at that 2017 clip, she specifically noted the importance of helping the community banks, the smallest banks, for the reasons that you said. I mean, they make most of the agriculture loans or the small business loans. It looks like she had it right then, Kevin. And now she's blaming the Trump administration. Why doesn't she blame? Why doesn't, you know, if she believe, why doesn't she just say, you know what, I was wrong a few years ago? Now, I don't think she was wrong a few years ago.
Right, she could do that, but she wasn't wrong.
That's right.
You know, and it's actually another thing to think about, that we've saved thousands of community banks with that regulation. And so, sure, a couple went down, but thousands would be out of business if we hadn't stopped the hemorrhaging of the industry. And the thing also that we did, as you'll recall, Larry, is we put in a safety valve. And so we said that basically the Fed could expand regulation to smaller banks if they saw one that they thought was in trouble. Mm-hmm. And so let's just say that you're a bank supervisor and you see that SVB goes from having $50 billion in assets to $200 billion in assets like almost overnight. Then you're going to think, oh, that's pretty close to the edge. We better take a close look at them. And they didn't do that. In fact, you know, the Federal Reserve's vice chair for regulation just came out and said that it was a textbook case of bank mismanagement. Well, if it's a textbook case for bank mismanagement, then the Fed should have noticed, right? It's in the textbook, right? So they should have seen it right away. But in fact, they didn't. Instead, they're pointing the finger at Trump.
Whatever goes wrong, you know, if it rains tomorrow, it's Trump's fault. If the Yankees lose tomorrow, if Garrett Cole loses his next start, they're going to blame Trump. I mean, it really is kind of a silly game. Look, Kevin, you know, Janet Yellen, who wasn't a bad Fed chair, by the way, but she's really gone downhill under Biden. She's the one who said there was no inflation and there was temporary and transitory. And that was wrong, too. And they all blame Trump.
Right.
Now, Biden always says when he inherited high inflation and a, quote, reeling economy. He always says that. And it's just a total untruth, Kevin. They need a lie detector test, this gang.
Yeah, but the fact is that the Treasury Secretary should not be out there pushing the lies. And if you go back and look, sure, there are definitely times in the Trump White House where there are partisan things going on. But for the most part, the economic team, we were out there on TV talking about the real numbers, and we fact-checked the heck out of numbers. And if we got one wrong, a couple times I got a number wrong, I tweeted right away to correct it. And so there seems to be no commitment to the truth right now. And again, basically a witch hunt against Donald Trump. And so, but if the Treasury Secretary, who's supposed to basically be the calm in financial markets where they're getting ready to panic, is out there basically participating in the witch hunt of Donald Trump, then, we're in a really bad state. And so I worry what's going to happen if this thing gets a little bit worse, because these people haven't examined at all what they did wrong. They're blaming something from years ago that they supported. And so what are they going to do if they actually have to think of some clever thing to fix the world in 3 months because something else happens? And I have no confidence in them whatsoever.
Well, that's why the dollar's slumping again. But I know what the solution is. Let's change horses 2024. Kevin Hassett, thank you, buddy. Appreciate it very much. Good piece.